This is Yusuf out here. Just got back from one of the most important days of my life. Kind of drained all energy, but I have a message to anti-theists or fundamentalist atheists or whatever you want to call yourself. For those who say that you cannot interpret the Bible, there's no interpretation allowed in the Bible, and that the Bible is 100% the Word of God and it's all equal. Does history show this? Do you see this anywhere in Christian history, in, say, the first 500 years? Or let's even just the first 300 years. Where are there slaughtering of goats? Where are there people saying, "Oh, your clothes are mixed with linen and leather. You're not allowed to wear that"? I mean, the New Testament would be the books that would be compiled as New Testament, the letters of Paul, especially in the Acts, and then even in the Gospels. Goes to great length to say that no, not even circumcision is necessary, which is one of the base things for Jewish law. I can get into Marcionism and the reason the Old Testament was tacked on, Septuagint, at that time it would be called. But have you read the New Testament? All the parables that are in there? How is there no interpretation in parables? The Apocalypse of John, which is not read in the East, but most of the anti-theists or fundamentalist atheists are from the West. So how do you take that book literally? It clearly says in the beginning it's a book of signs and symbols. There is interpretation there. Not to mention that to fully understand what's going on in these 4 different accounts, that's why there's the gospel is the message, but there's gospels according to. You have to know about the history, the destruction of the temple in 70 A.D., the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135. I don't understand where these Beelzebub characters come up. No, there can't be any interpretation in the Bible, or else Christianity doesn't exist. Well, the church existed. And there's extensive writing. I would urge people to read Ignatius of Antioch, Polycarp, Justin Martyr, Irenaeus of Lyon, Pius. Just for starters, the Ante-Nicene Fathers. Now, this isn't going to give you a perfect view, but also you can read Philo the Jew. I mean, he doesn't talk about Christianity, but he's talking about Judaism around close to the time of Christ. You have Josephus and the Jewish Wars, which mention Jesus. Pliny, Tacitus, Celsus. These are people who were not Christians, did not see Christ as, did not see Jesus as the Christ. So there's no interpretation at all allowed in the Bible, although I mean, it comes to a point of sheer stupidity. I don't think people like Beelzebub have ever read the New Testament. And then you get to different factions. There's the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is the ancient church. And people can argue which is the true line, whether it's the Syrian Church of the East, the Oriental Orthodox Communion, the Eastern Orthodox Communion. And then maybe a weaker case for Western Roman Catholics, and then extremely weak case for the Anglicans and Lutherans. But it would do people it would do them well to actually read, and not just the canonical scriptures, not just the canonical works in the New Testament, but also that which came out of the Nag Hammadi, in various books that have been found since. There's a Gospel of Judas that was apparently a Marcionite work, not written by Marcion himself, but a work that by his students. Now, it's referred to as a Marcionite work, I think by Irenaeus, but I think it's probably more of a Valentinian work. And I may be incorrect. He may actually ascribe it to Valentinus. But this idea that there can be no interpretation. Did you know that John, the Apostle John, had people who he taught? He had followers, basically disciples, Ignatius of Antioch and Polycarp being two of them. Peter and Paul had disciples. Pius knew Peter. Clement of Rome knew Peter and Paul. And there's people who they taught. Justin Martyr knew Polycarp. Irenaeus of Lyon knew Justin Martyr. And Ignatius of Antioch is probably from about 60 AD to as late as 120. I think 106 is usually the martyrdom date that they put for him. So you have all these people in the 2nd century, which would be, 100 to 199 AD, or AD 100 to AD 99. Irenaeus gets into the 3rd century, which would be the 200s. I'm speaking this way because I've come across many unintelligent atheists, and Orthodoxy doesn't believe in proselytizing, and I wouldn't want to proselytize. Well, I don't want any of these Beelzebub characters or bionic dances or anything to be Christians. Please do not be Christian. Maybe read some philosophical books. Atheist philosophical books. Probably Ayn Rand. Take a crack at Ayn Rand. The Virtue of Selfishness. The Satanic Bible. That can shed some light on man's need for religion, ritual, and dogma, and stuff like this. And this mantra that it takes an evil man, without religion you'd have evil men doing evil things, and good men doing good things, but it takes religion for a good man to do an evil thing. What about communism? And then you hear, oh, well, that's just secular religion. Okay, so then the problem isn't God and miracles and faith and all this other stuff. It's the ideology or the governing bodies or governments, because let's not fool ourselves. Suicide bombing started with the communists, started with the Marxists, and then it worked its way into Islam. Was it the Marxists or I think it was the Marxists, and then they got it from then the Hindus, and then the Muslims picked it up. But do some history and reading. I've studied to a great extent the first 800 years of Christianity. I know how the Bible was compiled. The initial video to Billsy Bob, I was commending him, and I said, hey, look, you can try to even give him ammunition. Look, the New Testament as we have it was not formed for about 400 years after the death of Christ. But nope. Blinders went up. He's just a fundamentalist. Christianity doesn't exist since there's more than one view of it. Well, there was Gnostics, there was Catholic, and I had to make so many videos about Catholic because people don't understand when I say Catholic, they immediately think Roman Catholic. Wrong. Ebionites, Marcionites, then you had break-offs of what was called the Catholic Church. You had the Arians, the Nestorians, Monophysites, these groups. So yeah, no, there's not allowed any interpretation in the Bible, and all the Bible's equal, and we have to take the Old Testament just as it's equal to the New Testament. Well, what does Ignatius of Antioch say, who's the earliest writer outside of the New Testament canon, and he may have written stuff before some of the writings of the New Testament canon were written? What does he say about it? I know what he says. Should I tell you? I'll let you figure that out. But so to anti-theists and these Beelzebub type characters, basically fundamentalist Christians that have gone one less God. They proselytize, they're hate-filled, they're elitists, all the disgusting things of American fundamentalist Christianity, and the atheists took them on board and just want one God less. Maybe check out the Oriental Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, the Syrian Church of the East, how they viewed things. Because there's no changes to their Christianity after about the 5th century. You have the Latin West that changed a lot until it got to the point of the Protestant Reformation. Then they started worshiping this thing called the Bible, which was the Old Testament with the New Testament, and then some books eviscerated from it. But there were other gospels out there. How did it get compiled? What were the beliefs? What were the common beliefs? What was the church? I have many videos on this. But have you guys asked yourself this question? Well, if one part of the Bible is not true, then none of it's true. Really, so works of mythology and histories and parables and teachings and ancient stories and theodicies and letters to different communities and apocalypses and all these things and encyclicals that were written by many different authors over centuries of time. If one line in one of those books is off, then the whole thing is out, right? I mean, that's logical. That's being a logical thinker, a skeptical, logical thinker. It smacks of straight up backwoods hillbilly fundamentalist Christianity, Westboro Baptist Church, and the hate that has been spewed by the anti-theists is ridiculously insane. If I am an atheist or a Satanist, you will never know it. Because it offends me so much that people know so little about history and won't even investigate it, and will try to argue about a point that they know nothing about. Now, history is something very near and dear to my heart. What is religion? Sam Harris makes a good point about it. It's belief, it's culture, it's customs, it's local morality, it's ritual, it's belief, it's a lot of these things. Is religion the problem? Is fundamentalism the problem? Is the fundamentalism of the ideology the problem? But no, let's act like a drunk in a bar and just start swearing and screaming at people and saying a bunch of racist stuff and then saying, well, you can't interpret anything or else you're not, then Christianity's not real, which was the thrust of the Beelzebub argument with cardinal virtues and with many other people. I actually commended him on his first video and I said, great job, but just differentiate Western American Christianity from Eastern Orthodoxy that doesn't view the Bible in the same way. We compiled it. We don't get our theology from the Bible. We existed before the Bible before the New Testament was compiled, and we compiled it. We decided which books were going to go in, which books weren't going to go in. It's just something to think about for the anti-theists, the Beelzebubs out there to think about. And if you're an atheist or an agnostic or you have criticisms of religion, I'd love to talk to you. But if you're going to pull a Beelzebub, there's no need to talk. But I miss Christopher Hitchens. I miss him a lot. I loved watching all of his. I'd watched hours and hours of his stuff on C-SPAN, of his debates. I think he crushed pretty much 99% all the Christians that he debated with. I used to say, why talk to atheists? It's just ridiculous. But I'd love to hear your guys' criticism. But the Beelzebubs, if you're going to lie yourself with that, the Beelzebubs of the world, how are you different than the Westboro Baptists? I mean, maybe a little bit different, but you're proselytizing, using hatred, bigotry. You're using labels you're just put a label on somebody, and the skeptical virtues lined up Hitler quotes with Beelzebub quotes, and they were identical. So this is to the anti-theist, fundamentalist atheist. Well, if you're a fundamentalist atheist, that's basically like a Beelzebub. But atheists and anti-theists, I'd love to start a dialogue with you. We can talk on Skype, or if you feel like doing PMs, private messages, that's cool too. Peace to you. May God save Serbia and Syria. Satanic Bible is a good book. Give it a read. It's a great book. I love it. And if you, how can you say that, this and that, and I can't like a book. I can't like Plato's Republic. Anton LaVey had a lot of skill and style, and thought it was a cool book. Does it mean that I agree with everything in there? No. So, it's just a video. Peace to you. May God save Serbia and Syria. This has been Yusuf Al-Tahir. All the parables that are in there. How is there no interpretation in parables? The Apocalypse of John, which is not read in the East, but most of the anti-theists or fundamentalist atheists are from the West. So how do you take that book literally? It clearly says goes to great length to say that no, not even circumcision is necessary, which is one of the base things for Jewish law. I can get into Marcionism and the reason the Old Testament was tacked on, Septuagint, at that time it would be called. But have you read the New Testament? This is Yusuf Alta here. Just got back from one of the most important days of my life. Kind of drained all energy, but I have a message to anti-theists or fundamentalist atheists or whatever you want to call yourself. For those who say that there is the first 300 years, there's where there's slaughtering of goats, where are there people saying, "Oh, your clothes are mixed with linen and leather; you're not allowed to wear that." I mean, the New Testament would be the books that would be compiled as New Testament, the letters of Paul, especially in the Acts, and then even in the Gospels. No, you cannot interpret the Bible. There's no interpretation allowed in the Bible. And that the Bible is 100% the Word of God, and it's all equal. Does history show this? Do you see this in anywhere in Christian history, in, say, the first 500 years? Or let's even just